Right, welcome folks. I see people coming into the Zoom here. We will get things started momentarily. Good evening, everybody. Welcome to the latest installment of Readings from the Room, which is a reading series through the Writers' Room of Boston. A little bit of information before we get to our wonderful readings this evening. The Writers' Room is a co-working space in Boston where writers of all ages, abilities, stages in their career can take some office space and live in community with writers. Well, work in community with writers. You don't live there necessarily, but it's open 24 hours a day. There is co-working space as well as private space for you to work. If you're interested in learning more information about it, I will put a link in the chat to our website where you can find previous recordings of this series as well as other events going on. We have all sorts of events. We do more intimate interviews with writers. We do other reading series in person as well as online. There's always stuff going on, so you can find out more about us on our website as well as on social media. We have an Instagram and a Facebook page where you can follow us. It's Writers Room of Boston. You can find out tons more information there. This series is made possible by grants from the Mass Cultural Council and the Boston Cultural Council. And we also rely on donations from friends. So if you are not a writer and you would like to support writers, donating to the Writers Room of Boston is a great way to do that. There is information about how to give on the website, and any donation to it is a tax deductible donation. So if that means something or matters to you as well, feel free to take advantage of that. It is a great cause to support. Tonight we have two wonderful readers for you. We have Eleanor Kedney and we have Matt Gillick. I'm very excited to have them both here with me. We will be doing a Q&A at the end after both of our readers have had their time to read. So if you have questions, please feel free to use the Q&A function in Zoom. I will pull questions from there if you have some. You can also post questions directly in the chat, although I tend to advise that space be used more as celebration and giving props to the readers as they go, because the question and answer function allows me to at least more directly keep track of what you all want to hear us talk about this evening. With all of that housekeeping out of the way, welcome everybody once again, and I would like to introduce to you our first reader for this evening. Eleanor Kedney is the author of two poetry collections, 12 Days from Transfer and Between the Earth and Sky, and a chapbook, The Offering. 12 Days from Transfer was a 2024 New Mexico Arizona Book Award finalist. Between the Earth and Sky was a finalist for the 2021 New Mexico Arizona Book Awards and the American Book Fest 2020 Best Book Awards. Her work has been published in various journals, magazines, and anthologies. Honors for individual poems include the 2019 River Sedge Poetry Prize from the University of Texas, Rio Grande Valley, and a finalist mention in the 2022 Mixalia Poetry Competition. Kedney founded the Tucson branch of the New York-based Writers Studio and served as director for 10 years. Inspired by craft techniques utilized in her books, Eleanor developed the Writing Toward Forgiveness workshop. She joined the Tucson Poetry Festival in 2021. She lives and joins us this evening from Tucson, Arizona, and Stonington, Connecticut, with her husband, Peter Schaefer, and their dog, Fred, and their cat, Ivy. Welcome, Eleanor. Thank you so much for being here. I am thrilled to hear what you have for us this evening.
Hi, thank you, Spencer. I appreciate the introduction and the invitation to participate in the writers' readings from the room in the writers' room. I'm going to be reading from my new book called 12 Days from Transfer. I hope that's coming through clearly. It looks a little fuzzy there. And I want to say something about this particular book. I was asked by Andrea Watson of Three Taoist Press if I would write tightly themed book about in vitro fertilization. She had read several poems that I had written for another manuscript and asked me to do that. And I said yes. And it took me 3 years to write the book. And so I thought that writing the book from a personal experience would help other women who were going through in vitro fertilization to feel less alone, less isolated, more understood. But what I found is that my readership has really educated me that the book, regardless of the theme, is about loss and grief. And I started to think about that this morning, that I've read other themed books that haven't necessarily been about an experience that I've had in my life or in my family. And yet I was able to connect to that book on a deep level because I found a way into the poems and felt the same level of grief and loss. So that shaped what I picked this morning to read tonight. And I want to say something about the title, 12 Days from Transfer. What that means is that there is 12 days from artificial insemination to when you know whether you're pregnant or not. And I see those 12 days as a container not only of time, but a container of a lot of different emotions that one would go through in 12 days, waiting for knowledge about something they cared so deeply about. And sometimes that timing does affect one's mood on a daily basis and brings in grief and loss and doubt and anger and confusion, all the emotions that we go through in life when we're anticipating something that we dearly, dearly want, but we're also afraid and fearing for the outcome. So I'm going to begin by reading a poem called Imagine. Page 22. Okay. Imagine. When Nina had a miscarriage, 5 of us gathered around Sharon's kitchen table. If only we could untie ribbons of congratulations 2 months earlier. There was a baby, she said, her voice sputtering. This grief imaginable, transferable, a yolk sac, limb marks, heartbeat. Our hands cradled teacups, sandwiches quartered for easy bites, fanned napkins on white plates. Jane brought lilacs from her garden. The morning the infertility clinic called, I let my husband hope another hour that an embryo implanted. He'd be arriving at work, turning on his computer, getting coffee, saying hello to coworkers. The sun still low, a weak light passed over me. My bathrobe tied, hands folded on the kitchen table. Outside, heels clicked across pavement, walkers jacketed by cold air, a stone-still rabbit under brush, unseen by a passing dog. Did I rest enough? Did I lift something too heavy, a book box, our 32-pound beagle, a jug of water? My husband's A positive blood type, my B negative. I needed more body fat on my hips. The heavy-set nurse's hearty echo, eat more pizza. I spoke last in the circle. No one ever asked me about it. Friend's owl-like silence, a bird transformed in a cloak of oak leaves. You look twice at the tree limb, doubt your eyes. Because there wasn't a baby, the counselor said. It was a family imagined. The other childless women, still as cut flowers, faded and reappeared, their blurred edges. My husband and I had stood on the rolling grass, threw pennies into our natural pond. The prior summer, we pressed water lily roots into the good soil below. The next poem I'm going to read is called Regret Requires Choice. And I felt like for many years, it was really taboo for women to say, I don't want children. And many women struggled with that. Many women have said to me, I read your book and I didn't really want to have children. And you say it in there. So this was a risk to come out and put it in a poem, in writing and published. Regret requires choice. It can be said every star was a mirage. My eyes linked to imaginary tips and angles, a hypotenuse, the garrulous quiet. I was never one who rolled on the floor, curved back, a spinning top, octopus arms mixing my charms with theirs. It can be said if my heart were plunged, I became indifferent, kept children's fingers sticky from raisins pinned in the air. It can be said I couldn't say, I don't want children, bristled against the strictures, admission tickets, while regret is the purview of the childless. Instead, I rode in light-lined darkness, the moon-clay sea leavened, my slicker drenched in the white-capped myth of mothering joy. So I wrote a poem called Descending Grace, and Andrea, my editor, said, well, now you have to write Ascending Grace. So Descending Grace was what it was like to bring my husband's sperm to the lab for testing or for, to working in a petri dish, and what that felt like to really want to say his name and really want the identity of the sperm in my hand to be delivered to the lab. But Ascending Grace came later, after realizing that there was not going to be a child. There was not, it didn't take for me. So the Ascending Grace is kind of just a wonderful, wonderful feeling of that there is something that was created. Ascending Grace. This poem agrees. We are made of stardust. The egg that waited in vitro, the sperm that tried to win. Above, perchal blue and draped willow canopies. Below, soil, granite, ocean, shells. Between, air, spirals, breath, rain. Folded hands, unfolding, fingers reach for you. We made zygotes, you say, dust between the stars. There's a thread of poems about two young children that I sponsored since they were early teens, and they live in India. They grew up, they're married now, they have children. They call me mom, and I'm now a grandmother, something that I never thought was possible. And it came from this relationship and this bond with Sri Ram and Kata Saritha. I have the series of poems, and they did become the thread. And I want to read a small section. They're long prose poems, but I want to read a small section of one. It's called Random Fieldstones. Let's see, Random Fieldstones on two. And on one page, it's random fieldstones, ... On the next facing page is ... washed in turmeric. But I'm going to just read the first one. When I speak of Sri Ram as my son, I offer you magic. The unseen flurry when a bond begins in one's heart and mind and flows as if a kiss blown into the universe. I place 7 fluorite hearts on gray cotton fabric, each one meant as a gift for people traveling with us. I asked Sri Ram if he would like to choose who gets which stone. He holds each heart, one by one, in his palm, and after a few quiet minutes, he named someone. The stones already had told me to whom they should go, and he picks as I had heard them. I smile. You're a stone listener. I didn't hold and feed Sri Ram as an infant, laugh with him as a small child, teach him to share a piece of cake with another, marvel when a butterfly lands on one's arm, or unwrap his early teenage years. We became like two tree branches, lengthening their reach toward the sun. Each thing learned about the other was a leaf sprout. When he swam laps in the hotel pool, his first time in a pool, I called to him, "How did you learn to swim?" He replied, "My mother put me in the well." I have a choice to make now. And I think in the sake of time, I am going to read a fun poem for its wonderful technique. The first part of the poem is 3 stanzas. The second part of the poem is 3 stanzas, but those stanzas are inverted and each line in the stanza is inverted. And the title of it is "The Womb is the Shape of an Inverted Pear." So there's inversion in the title as well. And I might raise my hand when I get to the change, so everybody can hear it for sure. I put these little tabs in here, but then I never use them. Okay. I'm gonna take a sip and of water first. The womb is shaped like an inverted pear. I hold the umbilical stem between pinched fingers, in the air plucked silence. What hangs is Anjou, the yew of my cupped hand beneath to catch. Imagine origin, pear tree, full leaf cultivar, seed fruit flesh cut seed. Inverted, womb-like means grasp, open fingers means teardrop. Let me see what I never thought of as pear. Dull view, dense flesh, black, gray, white, wave rising on an ultrasound, me looking for myself. Let me think of it now. Womb as pear, the taste, eaten whole. What dangles is core, rootstock. Rootstock, what dangles is core, eaten whole. Womb as pear, the taste, let me think of it now. Me looking for myself, wave rising on an ultrasound, black, gray, white, dull view, dense flesh as pear. What I never thought of, let me see, means teardrop, means grasp, open fingers, inverted, womb-like, seed, fruit, flesh cut, seed, full leaf cultivar, imagine origin, pear tree, beneath to catch, the yew of my cupped hand. What hangs is Anjou, in the air plucked silence, between pinched fingers, I hold the umbilical stem. Thank you very much, Spencer, for having me here, and thank you everybody for listening. I appreciate it.
Thank you so much, Eleanor. That was really wonderful. Those were fabulous poems. I'm very excited to ask you some questions about them once we listen to Matt's reading. Very happy to introduce you to our next reader, Matt Gillick. He is from Northern Virginia and is the co-founder and managing editor of Cult Magazine, which is based out of New York City. Most of his published work can be found at mattgillick.com, which we will put in the chat for you as well. And you can also follow him on the Blue Sky at Matty Squabbles if you would like to, I would assume, see his inner ramblings made flesh. Thank you for being here, Matt. It's great to have you. Take it away.
Thank you very much, Spencer. Thank you very much, Eleanor. Thank you, everyone who is part of this. I'm going to be reading from an essay that you can actually all follow along. If you look in the chat, it's available online in preview form at cultmag.net, not .com. We thought .net would be funny if we bought that domain. This is going to be an essay about the time that I went to possibly the worst music festival ever conceived. And I know like everyone thinks of the Fire Festival, but I really think this is worse because of how vapid and performatively moral it appeared to be. So the title of the essay is called The Depravity of Vegandale by me. So let's get going. A waxing gibbous moon floated sentinel over a clear, dying orange and ocean sky, while two train cars with strobing windows paraded past each other. The faraway vibrations rippled from the decayed metal supports, took root under my feet on Lot F outside City Field. Someone knocked into me while exiting a porta potty. After exchanging courtesies of a passing apology, I took in a deep whiff and smelled the burning rubber of the Whitestone Expressway, seasoned by the low tide of the nearby marina, sporadically interrupted by wafts of spicy cauliflower and falafel, mingling with the staid baseline of feces and urine. On a purple and pink stage, the rapper J. Phillips mumbled his latest single, and I thought out loud, so, this is Vegandale. A woman heard me, laughed, and confirmed we were indeed at Vegandale. My wife, V, her sisters, their friends, and myself had driven 2 hours and 25 miles to come to this, to partake in a spectacle flying under the veneered banner of veganism. I was one of 10,000 stooges. However, in a masochistic way, I'm grateful I witnessed such a vapid exercise. It was like a preview of things to come, an end of the world's fair. Now, Vegandale is a 9-city festival tour highlighting vegan vendors, obviously, often headlined by well-known musical acts. When my wife V asked if I wanted to come along, I was in the middle of what I call an eco-conscious spiral, which usually happens every summer after ingesting reports about insert year being the hottest summer on record. I get self-righteous and I spew these intolerable talking points as if I'm some ivory tower intellectual. During this annual cycle, I proclaim we have no respect for the planet and make half-baked pledges to rearrange my life. So, while looking up compost dumps I'd never drive to, ethical brands I'd never purchase, effective recycling, and fantasizing about what it would be like to drive an electric vehicle, let alone afford one, I thought attending a vegan music festival was just a swell idea. I was naive, but it was an opportunity to boost my ego, cope with my powerlessness against the death knell for the human race. Plus, I wouldn't have to do anything except show up. My presence was some vague endorsement of sustainability. Also, the rappers Quavo and Glorilla were on the marquee. I wouldn't get another chance to see them together in a lineup at such a good price, so I thought, why not go? Maybe I'll tell my grandchildren about the time I saw them perform while floodwaters brim to our roof and rescue choppers fly past us to the rich neighborhoods. Vegandale's tagline reads, where major musical artists, interactive art, hundreds of vendors, and thousands of people come together to realize a world without animal exploitation. Sounds good. Being on the peripherals of the no meat, no animal testing community, I wanted to embed myself in a mass gathering of these people because I simply hadn't been around many vegans before. I had questions as to how they bypass the big food industry, which only recently began catering to their market. Additionally, music festivals bring out this courteous, communal, and caregiving sentiment, a vibe where we're all dirty and a little dizzy, so we might as well be kind to one another. They aren't perfect, and there's no shortage of horror stories like Astroworld or Woodstock 1999, but I find them overall to be a safe space where everyone cosplays these artsy or hedonistic personae to distract themselves from stocking shelves, tending bar, office jobs, driving assholes from A to B. I certainly indulged as a single 20-something fast food cashier going to these festivals, But now, being a husband in his 30s, I was interested in the prospect of awakening this long desiccated vessel. Without getting into too much detail, I was rather feral in my behavior at these events when I first went, where my willingness to experience a pulsating sonic medley was only matched by my enthusiasm to alter my state of mind. My wife, V, never got to see me activate this buffoonery except when we attended a Sean Kingston concert for all the millennials out there, where I acted the drunken fool, mainlining 2007 nostalgia. She still hasn't seen this exhibitionist festival gremlin come out to play because the primary ingredient for such an activation is joy, and that's something Vegandale grievously lacked. Call that pretension, snootiness, or maturity, the bare fact is Vegandale fucking sucks. I should have suspected this when my wife told me Quavo bowed out, and we were left with Memphis, Tennessee's 12th most famous rapper, Glorilla. She is a torch-bearing, unapologetic representative of the hip-hop ratchet mentality, injected with a cavalier sensuality bordering on provocateur. Her music is so much fun, but lacks substance, yet it carries this energy of, I'm doing this anyway, so fight me. I appreciate the sexual muck of her entertainment persona, shaking anything and everything, because that is more a genuine reflection of our ethos as opposed to the Barbie doll aesthetics of Taylor Swift's pink bedroom cultism. To comment, the machinations behind American music enact a selectively paradoxical libido that often manufactures the historically underserved into the limelight and calls it inclusion because it gives the stilted and privileged, like myself, license to be who I want without exoticizing myself, a venue to counteract my Puritan DNA with little consequence. Some label that hypocritical and classist. I call it a culture structure reflecting decline. And this is no indictment on Glorilla or any artist like her, like Cardi B, Megan Thee Stallion, Amber Rose, Sexy Red. They reflect the subconscious finality of death we all try to avoid by using convenient vehicles for distraction, which is the point of most commercial art. It just so happens to be within a generation where our self-made end is tangible and looming. Vegandale's social media is expertly curated. Scrolling through previous iterations, it looked vibrant, filtered sunshine and bubbliness as if the photos themselves had dimples. Grassy fields, canopies of tents, plant-based food drizzled with hummus in checkered containers you get at the state fair, festival goers in jean vests, short shorts, tank tops, laurels resting upon frizzy hair. During the drive, we all expressed our willingness to walk into the festival with an open mind because we admittedly had lampooned the vegan lifestyle. Vegandale was an opportunity for us to interrogate our consumer habits. On the surface, there was also reason to be excited. These tickets were cheap, and there would be live music. If anything, we would make it a fun experience as a group, when we finally parked our car, by a marina overlooking the rusted docks of Flushing Bay. My sister-in-law and I smoked what was left of a joint roach. We then walked by Citi Field and saw a line of glamorous outfits, Cartier bags and YSL clutches, a molten saturation of good posture, adjusted lapels, and low busts. We found out that Vegandale was not in Citi Field, but in actually Lot F, while the event taking place in the stadium itself was the New York City Fine Wine Festival. The glitzy and well-groomed sauntered into an evening of rosé and Merlot, Chardonnay at sunset, while in the parking lot was this pig pen of the budgeted underbelly, hazy swarms of us shuffling into an asphalt tent city. I thought the wine festival looked pearl-clutched, and I pitied them probably the same way they felt sorry for us, watching hundreds blindly follow the booming stereo, reeking of summer afternoon and weed. We approached silos of huddled masses forming serpentine queues. I heard the alien warble of security wands, the TSA tones of ushers waving people through. While signs by the entrance read, "No outside food or drink," people dragged and wheeled in coolers of Henny Lattes, and that's a pina colada with Hennessy. There was also rolling papers, dime bags of whatever you wanted. I don't know how they got in with all that contraband, whereas my sister-in-law got pressed by some rent-a-bouncer wearing a faux Kevlar vest holding a water bottle. After 2 minutes of back and forth, we were rustled onto the festival grounds. The advertised color and expressiveness of Vegandale was a trick of the algorithm. Lot F resembled a cracked frying pan, 4 p.m. sunlight with no shade, no sitting area except on the margins near the hoofing 7-train bridge. Every surface appeared stained, weathered. I didn't fall upon any art installations or performers, just some haphazardly placed arches, scuffed white and green and indigo pillars with Vegandale branded on the chipped wood. This was where people could take photos for social media, but had to crop out their disappointment, perform out for their codependent followings, pardon me, where how they were here and how there was no other place they would rather be at Vegandale, except for maybe that beach or that yacht or that vineyard an acquaintance from high school just posted about. The most colorful area of the festival was the neon purple rows of porta potties. We navigated through the crowd, couples slurping from large sippy cups, their pores exuding a sugary dew, 2 long rows of tents, primarily food vendors touting all vegan selections. Behind the table fronts were deep fryers, grills, portable stoves, and aproned bodies glistening with grease, calling out orders. In my experience with music festivals, I normally would feel the bipolarity of anxiety and giddy anticipation, where the festival grounds appear so vast, so new, that this enclosed asphalt meadow was now a playground to explore, and I'd feel a little sad for not having the time or money to dabble in every experience offered. The stereo, but this was not so with Vegandale. Here, I only received the anxiety, the sensation of confinement, the stereo rumble, a carnival storm ready to engulf us all. I felt trapped, then assuaged when my wife V grabbed my hand. Smiling, she told me under her breath that it smelled like a lingering fart. So, I'm gonna put the well, I'll put it in later, but thank you. Yeah, appreciate it. That was a lot of fun. Thanks, Spence.
It's Matt. That was a lot of fun. Yeah, I mean, we're talking about something where you are taking a critical view. There is a lot of vibrancy in the way that you present it, despite the apparent lack of vibrancy at the festival itself. Welcome back, Eleanor. Thank you, everybody. Thank you both for reading. Those were truly fabulous. I always love hearing what the writers bring to this sort of event, where it is a more casual sort of reading format. If anybody has questions, please feel free to put them in the question and answer section. I have a few questions to kick us off with our writers here. And if either of you have questions for one another, or if you have anything else you would like to talk about with your work, please feel free to do so. My first question, I think I will pass to Eleanor here. And this comes from a bit about what you were talking about in introduction to your book, this idea of themed books and how how you find a way in through themed books that maybe are themed around something that is not directly related to your own life or experience. And I wonder how you think about that in your own poetry while you are writing. How do you think about how other readers might find a way in?
Well, one of the things, and I actually was thinking a lot about this morning. Like there's some books that I've read that are themed books where there'll be an image or there will be something said that doesn't matter what the theme is, but it'll perhaps strike a chord within me. And I think that in writing, I'm always, one of the techniques that I do is when I feel like I'm getting close to emotion that might be difficult for me to write about or even shut me down, I switch to an image. And that image, what it does for the reader is they can connect to the image and then go back to what the narrator is saying or doing in that moment. And often that'll come when I'm walking and I'll be struggling with an emotion that I want to get at in a poem, and all of a sudden something will happen. There'll be a bird in a tree. There'll be something that I can say, okay, that says it for me. And that becomes universal because people can work with an image and go back to their own emotions and connect. So that's a technique that I use in a lot of my poems.
Yeah, so writing towards the emotion as a way of presenting an opening for people to step into the experience a little bit more.
Right.
I feel that in your poems. I mean, there was a lot of those moments of openness and emotional openness that allow that kind of entry point for people. I particularly, I mean, the phrases like "it can be said" in the "regret requires choice" and the final line of "the white-capped myth of mothering joy" to me stood out as those very poignant sort of emotional entry point moments where there is this almost invitation for people to share the experience. Um, yeah, I mean, thank you for answering my question there. If anybody else has questions, it looks like Matt already answered one in the chat as well. Okay, very brief answer there for the question. Was the food good at least? Matt's answer, garbage, absolute garbage. Matt, would you like to elaborate on that
Sure.
that answer, or talk about maybe how because the food plays a sort of background role in this essay, despite the fact that this is ostensibly a festival celebrating a particular cuisine, a particular area of consumption of food. Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, just a kind of like a preface. That was only the first half of the essay, so it goes a lot deeper, and it actually gets a lot more into the food. But if you wanna do it, you got to purchase an issue of Cult Magazine. But it's for a good cause. 30% of all proceeds go to reputable Palestinian relief organizations, and it's more needed more than ever. But about the food. The thing is, I got several bits of food and I was expecting kind of like homemade sauce, all this different type of like interesting like homemade stuff, and it just was like over fried falafel and like chickpea based stuff that was supposed to come across as like or beet based stuff that come across as like, faux chicken, faux beef. Like there was like a jerk chicken wrap that people were getting, and it was just like really wet soggy mushroom stuff. And the drinks, I thought, oh, these are gonna be like independent brewers because it's like supposed to highlight local cuisine. Now you had Corona, White Claw, like any like Anheuser-Busch. It was just it just felt to me like such a cash grab. And the idea of like I have no problem with the vegan lifestyle. Because it's overall I would consider to be relatively moral. You don't want animal testing. You don't want all that stuff to be put in your food. But the way that the festival was organized meant that it was kind of like this kind of like shady endorsement of sustainability. But I've never seen so much trash in my life. I never saw so much unrecyclable material in my life. And like there was just a row of giant like porta potties everywhere. I'm like, this isn't sustainable. We're in the middle of a parking lot in Queens. This doesn't work. It smells like something's on fire.
Yeah, the sort of the you said cash grab, but it makes me think also of that. I mean, the kind of concept of greenwashing, where people like you make yourself a poster of sustainability, but you underneath are just trying to use the sort of social cred of sustainability in order to make money, which is often what happens with especially like events that are not set up as uh actually engaging like with the people who are practicing those things, but instead, like it sounds, supported by big corporations potentially, and promoting things that are not related to the actual lifestyle itself,
Not at all.
or values. Yeah, yeah.
I have
Thanks.
a full disclosure, I'm vegan.
Mhm.
Just came off a fabulous trip to Africa with World Vegan Travel, and one of the highlights was the food, like amazing food. The chefs
Yeah,
were just trying to wow us with five-course dinners of things like that were so unique and beautifully made. So it made me sad to hear the food was so bad, but I get it. And I thought it was a made-up place, but I'm from the East Coast and I can't imagine it in a parking lot with in Queens,
It
so
was
very legitimate, but I was laughing at the porta potties, being
yeah. It was
colors.
to kind of like expound on what you said. It's like basically I'm like I was trying to find something to tether myself to of understanding like the vegan philosophy because I felt like it was interrogating the vegan philosophy just for its very existence when it was supposed to be endorsing it. but if you were
Right.
actually discerning it, it wasn't doing it well.
Mhm.
And the whole point was I actually felt like I was more like rustled cattle that would be going to the slaughterhouse.
Oh my God, this is
Because
awful.
like you were always like the police were always around. They were just kind of like going like this, like with their Kevlar vest, just like walking around, like there were some rustlers. And I was like looking around and I'm thinking, what's it almost felt like I was part of an experiment. And it was and like one of the lines in the essay is like, is this what it feels like to be a calf looking up at the sky one last time before being led to a dark room?
Mm.
Like that, like that's what it felt like because it just felt kind of so cynical. And while like, you have all these like beautiful imagery of like, penguins holding hands like on like during sunset. And I'm just like, oh, how beautiful. And I just see like tumbleweeds of like plastic bags just like rolling through the parking lot. It was disgusting.
Yeah. Well, and Eleanor, I agree with you that vegan food can be incredible when it is
Oh,
It
done
can.
well,
wonderful.
and there are
I've tried it as well.
yeah, there's so many cultures that like that is just the baseline of their cuisine is vegan. There is so much that is there, and so I think part of that the the entertainment maybe of the essay is that disconnect between what people who
Mhm.
are vegan and people who live that way would actually know as veganism and what is being presented as veganism in this place at this festival. It is a very odd like contrast. It is like all of that comes through in the essay very well, or at least the part that we were able to enjoy this evening.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, there are no other questions yet. So I have another question for you, Eleanor, that I'm one of the things that stood out to me with many of your poems as you talked about these this engaging with um I mean miscarriage and the difficulties of pregnancy and how do you go through things like in vitro fertilization, and you're talking about these things that are um essentially like scientific topics, like things that usually are talked about in very medical terms and scientific terms. And I mean, I loved the line in Ascending Grace, we made zygotes and then dust between the stars. This bringing in of actual scientific language into um, poetry. And I wonder how if you could talk about how you think about the sort of artist's touch on a very scientific topic on this, where those things maybe align with each other in unexpected ways, or how you
Mhm.
found your way into talking about this topic through poetry.
Well, it's interesting because the very first poem that I wrote is the title poem, 12 Days from Transfer. And it's a very angry poem, and all scientific. And I'll just read a couple of quick lines, but it goes on for 2 pages,
Yeah, please do.
and ends with, no, I don't want to do this again. But it's because they suppress you with Lupron, and that's the easy to mix shot, the cheapest shot, the thinnest needle that goes into the soft part of the belly. Hell, that one you can give to yourself with a running start, in airport bathrooms, friends' bedrooms, wherever you're going. This one won't slow you down on day 21. I mean, and bam, bam, bam. And underneath all of the anger of this was done, then that's done, and then you get the hot flashes, and then then you're in the clinic, and then all this stuff, and then you decide, let's, there's the zygotes, let's put in 6, like all this stuff that you do for this period of time, and then it doesn't work. But underneath that is the sorrow, like you feel almost attacked. And the thing is that um, scientific language, when it's often used, can help bring the mood of the poem out even more. Catherine Strisick has a poem, has a book called The Mistress, and the mistress is Parkinson's, and their drugs speak, and Parkinson speaks, and she speaks, and technically it's marvelous. And here there's the person who's so wounded, who's so angry, whose body's been so assaulted, and out of that there's a line, 6 gray moons on a screen, You know, they were not zygotes. I wanted to name them. There were 6 gray moons on a screen. And then I have another poem called 6 Gray Moons on a Screen that talks about them, you know, as though this was so sacred. And it feeds off that loss, if that
Yeah,
makes sense.
it does. I mean, I think I often, I mean, I teach writing and rhetoric and all that stuff, and often we talk about academic language and scientific language as this thing that sometimes gets thrown on top of stuff because it creates emotional distance from what you're talking about. But to use it in this way as a way of getting closer to the emotional experience, especially that anger. I mean, even those few lines you read feel through that sort of the use of the specific names of the drugs and the procedures and things like that, it feels much more um, real, because when you're in that environment and in that experience, that language becomes a sort of I mean, it is the fabric from which all of those experiences are woven. There, it is how it is made. Um, and using the language, I think, in an artistic way, in a poem, is a great way of changing the feeling of that language as well. Really
Right.
beautifully done. All of those poems were so wonderful. Um, yeah, thank you both so much for being here. We are nearly out of time here. So before I let you go, and before I let our audience go about their evenings, I'd like to give you each a chance to plug anything you would like to plug. Eleanor, if you'd like to go first, go ahead and tell us what
Yeah,
you've got going
I
on.
mentioned a couple of things in the chat. One, my website is eleanorkedney.com. You can click on the book and it takes you to Three Taos Press, read some reviews about it and some blurbs about it. And then I'm in Arizona, 93 degrees today we had, unreal. But on April 5th, I'll be in Boston at the Jamaica Plain branch of the Boston Public Library, and I'm reading for the New England Poetry Club, and with 2 other writers. So it's at 3 o'clock. Come support libraries. My God, we need to help our libraries. We can't lose our libraries. And come for poetry. Poetry is a form of protest, you know. And there's going to be a protest downtown, we heard, in Boston, downtown Boston, that morning. But go to the protest if you want, but come and hear poetry as well. And feel free, if you go on my website, there's a page to send me a message, you know, let me know what you think. If you want a signed copy, I can do that too. I can mail that.
Thank you so much, Eleanor. That's really, really wonderful. And yeah, that's a great plug for a local event. Go to the Jamaican Plains Library, hear some good poetry. April 5th, it's coming right up. It'll be here before we know it. Matt, anything that you would like to plug?
Sure. First of all, I just want to say thank you to Spencer and Eleanor. It was wonderful. It was really cool to learn that you're vegan. The reading, like, it couldn't have been cooler for this situation. But I would say that I would like you all to purchase a issue of Cult Magazine. You will be able to donate to one of 3 organizations of Palestinian relief: the Palestine Children's Relief Fund, Heal Palestine, and the Palestine Red Crescent Society, which is an international Red Cross recognized medical organization. Please do it. The genocide is back up, and it's time to really, like, you know, we can do protests, but what these people need is cash, and what these people need is medicine and a place to stay, and a place to survive. And that I really want to make sure that this is like a focal point of the issue. And yeah, check out my other work. I mostly write fiction, so this essay is kind of a little strange, a one-off for me. And Freed Mahmoud Khalil.
Thank you, Matt. Thank you both so much for being here. This was, I love doing this. This is such a wonderful thing, and bringing you both here. It was a joy. It was such a pleasure this evening to have you. A couple of things before I say goodnight to everybody. Thank you both once again. This was absolutely wonderful. And just so you are all aware, our next reading from the room will be, I need to make sure that I have my calendar up here. Our next reading from the room will be on April 29th, and we'll have two wonderful readers for you. We have Anu Kandakupa, who is an alumni of the Writers' Room of Boston, has a new book out, and Jake Hargrove, another friend and collaborator on Cult Magazine, who has agreed to read as well. So look out for more information to come on that. I would hope to see you, as many of you as can be there in the room once again. So finally, thank you once again and good night. Have a lovely
Thank you,
evening.
Spencer. Thank you, Matt.
Thank you.